Hi, I'm Amy from AMYBAKESBREAD. I have a sourdough baking website where I am teaching you how to make sourdough bread. Not just good sourdough bread, but basically anything sourdough. So you can make so many things with a sourdough starter. I get asked a lot of questions about what tools do I most use in my kitchen to make sourdough, what tools are essential, what things are nice to have, or things that you maybe want to gift or save up for. And so I'm going to talk a little bit today about some of those tools that I use all the time in my kitchen. These are the ones that I constantly come back to and are the ones that I'm recommending. And you'll be able to find all of this linked in the bottom of this video. And I'll put all of the links in there so you can check them out if you're interested in any of these items. First, I have to give a little plug to my cookbook. This is the Beginner's Guide to Sourdough. This book really will teach you everything that you need to know how to get started with sourdough, but also has 50 incredible recipes. So if you're already a sourdough baker, this is a great resource for you as well. It does talk about the tools that you will need in there. I just think that it's great to have a good book that kind of gives you the foundation of sourdough. This is the one that you're going to want if you're just starting out or you really love to make sourdough. It's got really some incredible recipes. Here's the inside of the book so you can see the table of contents. It walks you through your first loaf, your second loaf, your third, fourth bake, fifth bake, bread for special days. Really so many incredible recipes in here, and it really takes you step by step through how sourdough is made. It gives you guidelines, temperature guidelines, just all of these incredible things. You get a whole how to make a starter, what it's gonna look like throughout the process. This really is an incredible resource for a sourdough baker. So if you're new, just wondering what tools you need, definitely pick up a copy of my cookbook. Just getting started with sourdough, these are the things that I really recommend you get. Start with a kitchen scale. You definitely want to use grams and weight measurements if you're just starting with sourdough. If you are used to using cups, I get it. I did not want to make the switch either. I've used cups, for so long. But the weight measurements are just going to make your bread so much better. And if you're new, you probably don't know how sourdough should feel. I grew up kind of going by the feel of the bread when I was using my cups, and I learned by feel. Sourdough you can learn by feel, but it's gonna take a little while to get there. And so using a scale is just gonna help you level up your sourdough so much more. It's gonna be consistent every time. You don't have to get measuring cups dirty, all of that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of reasons why I do love using a scale. So invest in the kitchen scale is really great. There's lots of different ones. I love the Broad & Taylor products, so I typically recommend them. They're really made for sourdough bakers. So definitely love that. Another thing that I feel like a home baker is gonna want is a Dutch oven. I love this Dutch oven. You want one that's rated to about 500 degrees because you want to bake these sourdough breads at really high temperatures. And the point of a Dutch oven is it's going to trap the steam because of the lid. So it will trap the steam for the first 25-30 minutes of the bake, and then the last part of the bake, you let the steam out. Home ovens typically are not set up to have steam in them to keep the steam in. They're set up to vent the steam out. So it can be a little bit tricky to make a crusty loaf of sourdough bread if you don't have a Dutch oven. You can do it. You can definitely open bake. You can even bake in a loaf pan, which I like to do as well. But if you're a true beginner and you want that round bowl loaf, get a Dutch oven. It's going to give you the best results based on your own oven. So this is gonna be more consistent based on your home oven if you're a beginner. I also use it for soups and things like that, so it's multi-purpose. I like a jar for my sourdough starter. You can totally use just a mason jar, and I've used these for years as well. As I baked more and more sourdough, I tend to really like my sourdough jar. I like that it has this lid on here, and it's enough starter that I can bake with it frequently because I do like to bake with it frequently, but you don't have to keep that much starter. You can keep a smaller amount. You can use just a ball mason jar. I also like a little tool to stir down my sourdough. You can use a spoon, is fine too, but this little silicone tool makes it really easy to just scrape around the edges of the jar as you are feeding your starter and maintaining it. Another thing that I really love is a dough whisk. This whisk is easy to mix up your dough, and I use it also for like pancake batters and things like that. This one's probably not a necessity, but I really like it. It keeps my fingers from getting overly sticky, so I do like that. This is just a really cheap little silicone tool, but it helps me to kind of scrape the dough around, and I love that as well because sourdough is higher hydration. It means it has more water in it. So you're gonna be working with these doughs that have more water, and it's nice to have a tool that kind of repels the water in a way so that it doesn't stick to the tool because it's going to be trying to stick to your hands as well. So this is like really cheap little tool that I use a lot. And then definitely a bench scraper is helpful for any of this baking. I like to go around my dough, and I use this when I'm shaping my dough. I use it to cut dough. I even use this to cut my cinnamon rolls. I use this all the time. And then you can use it to clean your counters even. So this is a really great product as well. When it's time to actually shape a sourdough loaf, I do like these bannetons. Once again, Broad & Taylor. These are really great ones, but you can find other ones on Amazon, or for years, I just used my kitchen bowls. You can do that too. You don't have to invest in bannetons, but some people really like it. They like the way that it looks. I recommend Broad & Taylor for bannetons if you can snag them. I also like to put a hairnet in my banneton. The thing about the hairnet is that it makes it so that the sourdough loaf doesn't stick. So I don't have to add any extra flour in my shaping, which is really nice. So I like to use a hairnet to line with. I plop my loaf in here, and then I like to use a shower cap. I use these all the time. I reuse them. You can also reuse the hairnets. And I place them on top of my dough, and it acts as just like a little cover. I use this all the time for any of my bread doughs. This can fit a variety of containers, a variety of bowls. So if you don't have a bowl cover, this makes a really simple, easy thing to use. When talking about bowls, you can just use a large mixing bowl that you have at home. I've done that for many years, but if you're mixing multiple loaves, I like these proofing containers. They have a lid on them. They're really, really nice, and it makes it super easy to just kind of mix up your dough, to do some coil folds. Usually if you're gonna make 2 to 3 loaves, I'll use this container. If I'm just making 1 loaf, I will tend to just use a mixing bowl. I don't really have mixing bowls that I recommend necessarily. I bought a lot of mine from Costco over the years. So here's an example. I have 1 loaf in here. And so if I'm going to, just do my stretch and folds on here, it's easy to do in just 1 bowl. I use my plastic shower cap and cover it up, and I'll come back to it. Here's in my container. Had a loaf already ready going this morning. I only did 1 loaf in here. Typically I like to do 2 because it fills the whole container, but you can easily do a nice little coil fold here. This is a really great dough container, so I definitely love these. Once again, Broad & Taylor, if you're looking. When it actually comes time to bake the dough, I do like using a bread lahm. This one is my favorite. It's a Knead Ace, and you can change out these razor blades. I buy extra razor blades and I change them out every couple of loaves or so, just so I get a really nice score on there. And I like these because these are magnetic. I can just open it up really easy and switch out my blade, which I'm gonna do right now. You don't have to have a little scoring tool. You could just use a razor blade, or you could use a sharp knife if you wanted to. But I really like how these work and how easy they are to kind of slide up and down. That easy to change out, and you can easily slide it up and down for scoring. That's really a nice scoring tool. Another favorite of mine are these thermometers from ThermoWorks. Sourdough is really, really dependent on temperature. How it's gonna rise in everything. And sometimes I'm in my house and I think I know the temperature, but the temperature of my dough is really different from the temperature of my house. Or, you know, I'm thinking I know what 78 degrees feels like, and I touch my dough, but it's actually like quite a bit cooler, or sometimes warmer. Sometimes it's hard to know, so a thermometer really helps. I love ThermoWorks. I've bought other thermometers before, and these are by far the best. They have tons of different options at different price points. I love them to temp my dough, take the temperature of my dough throughout the process, but I also love them to check the temperature of my bread when it's done in the oven. So those two things are gonna make you a better baker if you have a really good thermometer. They have like a ThermoPop thermometer. That's probably their cheapest option. That works great too. I just love these. My husband uses them all the time for grilling and smoking meats and stuff like that. So definitely check them out if you are in the market for a thermometer. I wanted to touch really quick on the loaf pans. I often will make my sourdough in a loaf pan instead of in a Dutch oven. And if you wanted to do that, that's another great way to do it. I love these USA loaf pans. They are really, really great. If you don't have a USA loaf pan, then a Circulon one can work well too. Just make sure if you're making a sourdough loaf in it that typically has about 500 grams of flour, you want like a 9x5 pan, or I think this may even be a 1.5 pound loaf pan. So a little bit bigger loaf pan than I use for my traditional sandwich loaves. A few more things that I do love for my sourdough as I've gotten more and more into sourdough baking is I've realized the importance of temperature in my sourdough. And so Broad & Taylor makes a really great folding bread proofer. And this I love for making sure that my dough kind of stays correct at the right temperature. If you really get into sourdough baking, if it kind of becomes your thing that you want to make all of your things naturally leavened, all of your doughs and sandwich loaves and burger buns and all of the cinnamon rolls, all the yummy things, definitely invest in a bread proofer. Now there's another option too, is this dough mat. I love this too. This is Bakehouse Essentials, and this can keep your stuff warm. I especially love it for rolls, cinnamon rolls, and this is the large size. You can put a whole sheet pan on here. You plug it in, it keeps your things warm. So just anything, if you don't, you know, have one of these tools, you can always find a warm place in your house. Some people use like a cooler with boiling water, a microwave with boiling water, an oven with a light on, especially in the winter months, which is when I'm often wanting to bake more. This comes in super handy. And this does fold up, this proofer folds up super flat, so you're able to store it away when you're not using it. A few more favorite items I wanted to talk about that are not necessarily sourdough specific, but they definitely help make my sourdough bread better. So I love my Nutri-Mill Harvest Grain Mill. They sell out a lot, so you kind of have to watch for when they're back in stock. But a grain mill is just gonna give you really good grains. So if you mill your own flour, freshly milled flour, it's just gonna taste a little bit better. I don't usually make 100% freshly milled bread loaves. I like to put some into my sourdough, but when I'm making muffins or pancakes or things, then I usually do 100% freshly milled. So I kind of do a combination of those things. I love using this in my kitchen because I can just plug it in. I turn it on, the grain comes out just right through here, and it really makes fantastic, fantastic sourdough breads. You may see behind me, I also have a bunch of stand mixers. I love a good stand mixer in my kitchen. I use them all the time, not necessarily for high hydration sourdoughs, but you can. I definitely think it's worth investing in a good mixer if you're a baker. I have a whole YouTube video about how all these mixers work and a blog post about it too. So if you are in the market for a new stand mixer, go check out all my 4 popular stand mixers. And then the last thing that I wanted to share are these incredible bread slicers. Once you get your loaf out of the oven and you let it cool, how do you slice it up? So I've just recently bought these bread slicers. I have one other one as well. This one is the most, I feel like, cost effective, and it's really, it's great. If you don't have a bread slicer, a really good bread knife is also a must. And then I do love my bread bags that I can put my bread into. These are easy for gifting, or I stick my sliced bread in here, stick it in the freezer, and then I have fresh bread all the time. I hope that this was helpful for you. This is not all of the tools that I use, but these are the ones that I probably use the most. I want you to be successful with sourdough. I hope that it's helpful. Ask me any questions in the comments and I'm happy to help you try to figure it out.